Well, ladies and gentlemen, we are finally back. It's been a while to the Evan Haynes MMA show, joined by co-host Eric Larochelle.
How's it going? UFC 260.
Yes, sirs, and yes, ma'ams. We're both highly disappointed in this card, especially with the Volkanovski Ortega fight falling out. Just give me your thoughts on the overall card.
I mean, you take that out, you could have flip-flopped Miocic and Ngannou, verbatim. I think everyone wanted to see the Volkanovski fight and Ortega just as much. I'm devastated, and I don't even know. Not that they should have switched this to a fight night, but still, yeah, when the heavyweight belt is on the line, Dana's always going to put that in the pay-per-view category.
Yeah, and it's also going to be interesting too because Volkanovski's from Australia, which has really strict COVID rules, and he got COVID, so he has to quarantine for like a month to get back into Australia. So we'll see when that's going to happen, especially after Max Holloway dominated Calvin Kattar. So like that division's kind of stuck. So with that being said, we're not going to go over every fight just because this is a pretty weak pay-per-view to begin with. So we'll do the main card for y'all. We picked out two fights on the prelims. We'll get started with the Jared Gooden Abu Bakar Nurmagomedov fight. Laura, I'll let you take it away with Nurmagomedov.
Well, I'm sure y'all remember that name, to say the least. Although he's not the brother of Khabib, he is a close cousin. And they all train in the same camp. And as you all know, since Khabib's retirement, that begs the big question: is he going to go full-time training, with the team that he's with? And that's a scary thought as well, as a full-time trainer, if he can devote his time towards that. But he's going against a guy, Jared Gooden, all right? And this is in the prelims. And for Gooden, it's his first fight in the UFC, I believe. And for Nurmagomedov, it's his second. So to have a spread like minus 240 and plus 200, that's a bit far-fetched for two relative newcomers, to the UFC.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure at this point, Nurmagomedov is the last name, like how Jones or Smith would be in America. I'm pretty sure Nurmagomedov is in the Caucasus. Yeah, one thing, this will be Jared Gooden's second fight in the UFC. He lost to Alan Jobain on UFC 255 by unanimous decision. I think the line's just so heavily spread just because his last name is Nurmagomedov. With that being said, Jared, this will be an interesting fight. I'm not going to touch it just because I think Nurmagomedov's going to do the typical thing of just lay on him and make it a really boring fight. But Jared Gooden does have good ground game. And in Nurmagomedov's last fight, he got submitted while he was on top. So it'll be really interesting to see. And like you said, Khabib is full-time training. I'm pretty sure in an interview, he's trying to win Coach of the Year this year. So Nurmagomedov is in the Khabib camp as well. There's another fighter on here, Abu Azatar. He's the first fight of the night. He's also training with Khabib. So I know we hate to agree on fights because it's not interesting, but I do think Nurmagomedov gets this done.
Yeah, and I can agree with that. And there's some definite statistics that back that factor. He has 100% takedown accuracy, and that goes hand in hand with that last name that we were just talking about. Those guys are there's grapplers, and then there's those elite, Dagestan Russian cats. And he averages 5.29 takedowns per fight, which is a staggering number. And in a prelim fight where there's only 3 rounds, if he can avoid that, it was probably a slight mistake because he was winning that last fight when he lost by armbar in the previous one. If he can avoid that, and I think, that was probably a mental check for him. I agree, but the minus 240 is still bugging at me. I don't know. That's a pretty big favorite. I still would take Nurmagomedov on this as well.
Yeah, and Jared Gooden does have 100% takedown accuracy in the UFC, or takedown defense, my bad. So he's never been taken down in the UFC before, and he's huge for this weight class. He also lands 6.67 significant strikes per minute. So if you're looking for a dog, I wouldn't chase it on this one just because Gooden's best bet is to just full on charge him and hopefully catch him with a punch. Because like you said, I don't think, even though Gooden has good ground game, I don't think it's going to compete with someone who has grown up in the Nurmagomedov family. So I think the Nurmagomedov is a good one if you want that. A really good one in this though is over 2.5. I don't think either guy knocks him out, especially if Nurmagomedov implements his game plan.
Yeah, in those, ground skirmish, scramble type of fights, knockouts are a lot less prominent, compared they're on the feet the entire fight. Yeah, I don't see it going by knockout either. And as you said, Gooden has a 100% takedown defense, but I don't think he's fought anyone like Abukabar. So no, yeah.
So moving on, we're gonna do the what do you call it? The featured prelim of the night. It was supposed to be Alonzo Menefield versus William Knight. This fight had already been scheduled once. Knight had COVID the first time, I think. And now the second time he gets COVID again, or someone on his team. So clearly William Knight has no idea how to handle his protocols. He's being replaced by Fabio Charant. Do you want to take it away with Menefield?
Yeah, and I was looking forward to his featured opponent that, backed out. And my point on Menefield, and I think there's a reason he's a minus 270 favorite, is because you get guys like this. And Fabio Charant, I'm not knocking him at all, but he's also stepping in on what looks like to be less than a week's notice. And we don't know how this guy's camp's been going, where his head's at, even if he thought of having an opponent like Menefield, who, if you're coming off the couch, this is a dangerous guy. He's 9-2. It's his 5th fight in the UFC. He's a Muay Thai specialist, and he comes to swing. He's no slouch anywhere.
He's built like a fucking brick. He literally looks like Hulk. So with the little knowledge we have of Fabio Charant, his nickname is the Water Buffalo. He's 7-1. 5 of those wins are coming by submission. His one loss is by KO. He's never fought in the UFC. His only loss was on the Contender Series 2 years ago to Alexa Kamor. He's on a 3-fight win streak. He fights out of LFA. His last fight was February 12th, so less than a month ago. It was a decision. It was a 5-round decision. So let me get your thoughts on this, Laro. Fabio, I guess, shows that he can go 5 rounds. He has a few decisions by 3 rounds. Alonzo Menefield does not have a fucking gas tank to save his life. So even with him being this 1-week opponent, and Alonzo should easily win this, I agree with you on that. What do you think his chances are going past the first round, say?
Well, like you said, he fought this other Fabio Charant. He fought a month ago, and it was a 5-round decision. So even if that decision is unanimous, 30 days is not a long time for your body to fully recover. Guys who are in title fights, there's a reason they only defend the belt, 3, maybe 4 times a year if they come off a quick knockout or something like that. A 5-round fight, that can do a lot of damage to someone. And he could have jumped the gun on this a little bit. I highly doubt he's 100% healthy. And the beauty, this is the prelim, like you said, Menefield doesn't have a huge gas tank. Well, he might not have to expend it all the way because it's a 3-round fight. I think he's going to pick and choose his chances to explode and not blow it out, all in the first round per se.
Yeah, for the audience listening, I think this is another one to just stay away from, just because Alonzo Menefield should easily win this. He should easily get a knockout in the first round. The question will be, though, is if it goes past the first round, if you watch Alonzo Menefield's fights at all, he has no gas tank. You could put Laro or I in there, and our gas tank would be better than his. He legitimately, I don't know, he doesn't train cardio. He's just going to run at you, and he's going to just throw bombs. And I just don't think Fabio, like you said, 5 rounds a month ago, that's a lot of damage for a fighter. I think he's just taking this to get that UFC shot. But we saw last week, too, in the heavyweight division, Tai Tuivasa, he had a weak replacement and knocked him out in, I think, like 10 seconds, like immediately knocked his ass out.
Yeah.
So,
and if you want to look at the numbers, I mean, Menefield's significant strikes landed per minute almost more than doubles Fabio's. He's on an average of 3.34, and that may not be as impressive in the lighter weight divisions, but this guy's a light heavyweight. Like you said, he's a tank, and he's landing these shots. So it doesn't look good for Fabio, at least in the early part of the, first, maybe second round.
So with that being said, we're going to move on to the main card. We're going to start with Jamie Malarkey versus Kama Worthy in the lightweight division. Laro, take it away with Kama.
Okay, Kama, he is, give me 1 second. He's a minus 130 favorite. All right. He's 5'11" with a 74-inch reach. And that, that's about average for the lightweight division or what have you. So the spread's pretty even. Both these guys, 5'11", 6 foot, both 74-inch reaches. What I like about Kama, and I've seen his strike, and his numbers are amazing. A little over 4 significant strikes per minute, with amazing leg combinations as well. And what surprised me the most in one of his most recent fights against Luis Pena, he was on the Contender Series or the Ultimate Fighter a couple years ago. He's been that kind of journeyman for the UFC. Who's a high-level black belt, and Worthy comes in and submits this guy. Worthy being a predominant striker, surprised me in that. So most props to him. He's clearly shown he's elevated his game.
Yeah, and so one thing about Kama Worthy that some people will know is his last fight was against Otman Izatar, the brother of Abu Izatar, the guy I was talking about earlier. I max bet Kama Worthy in when he fought Otman. I thought he was a lock. He had a great, like you said, guillotine choke on Luis Pena, and then he proceeded to get knocked out in the first round by Otman. So Kama does scare me in this. The thing though is Jamie Malarkey. So he's coming off 2 straight losses. And his last fight, October 17th, the Ortega Korean Zombie, he lost to Faris Siam. Before that, he lost to Brad Rydell. Jamie Malarkey is more of a counter striker. He fights out of Magnus MMA in Australia. So Kama is going to get in there and he's going to make it greasy, and he throws bombs. Jamie Malarkey's more of the type, he's going to stay at range. He's going to try to outpoint you. He's not, well, actually he is a big power puncher. Fuck, my bad. I would say in this fight, Kama Worthy should easily get this done just because I think he's the faster fighter. He's way bigger. He's 5'11", you said, 6 foot.
Yeah. And they have the same range.
Yeah. Jamie's only 5'8". So Kama definitely has the height advantage on that. If I was going to do something on this, I would say take the under of the fight. Kama also, after the Otman fight, Kama's known to get hit. And he doesn't have a granite chin. If you hit him good, he's going to fall. On the other end, Jamie Malarkey has really bad defense. Like you can piece his ass up. So I think this is going to be a really good fight to watch just because both these guys are prone to getting knocked out.
Yeah, I agree. He's very fun. Kama is very fun to watch. And like you said, Malarkey, he's lost his last 2. And prior to that, he wasn't even in the UFC. So it makes me ponder whether, the big lights in the UFC has kind of gotten to him, because they've both been unanimous decisions that he has lost. So I think the bright lights might have turned him into even more of a counter striker, defensive fighter, which at this day and age, you're in the, well, he's on the main card now, but prior to that, you're not going to get any attention from Dana if you're trying to play it safe and just coast your way onto the main card. I agree. I'd take Worthy at minus 130.
Yeah, and the only thing you want to watch out for, the under looks really juicy just because out of the 7 losses Kama's had, 6 of them he's been knocked out, and the other one he was submitted. So Kama's never lost a decision. He either gets knocked out, he mostly gets knocked out. And he's also 35 or 34, my bad, excuse me. So I like the under or Kama in this one. I just don't think Jamie Malarkey has the goods to get it done. All right. Now let's move into some more juicy fights. We got Thomas Almeida versus the one and only Sugar Show O'Malley. Laro, take it away with our boy Sugar Show.
Oh my God. Welcome to the Sugar Show. As he said, this is my show now, and I think he has returned in full form. We've both seen him on social media, his training videos. The dude looks solid, and he looks recovered. His last fight, 7 months ago. So I think he's had time, to rehabilitate and, get his head right. And he's coming against a dangerous guy in Almeida. But yeah, this is something we need to talk about. I want to hear your stance.
Okay, so my stance on Sugar Show, for those of you that don't know, he's 12-1, but according to him, he's 12-0. He's undefeated. He doesn't count the Overa loss as a loss because he said that his big toe hit a nerve and gave him nerve damage, that he didn't get leg kicked to death, even though Sean O'Malley's record up to that point, he didn't fight anyone good. And then he steps into someone who's pretty good in Vera, and Vera just leg kicked him to death. Thomas Almeida, on the other hand, has fought a who's who in their division. He's got a loss to Cody Garbrandt. He got knocked out in the first round. He's lost to Jimmy Rivera, Rob Font, and in his last one, Jonathan Martinez. All four of those guys he's lost to are contenders. Rob Font is going to fight Cody Garbrandt in May, I believe, for the contender in that, because Sandhagen and Dillashaw are also fighting.
Ooh.
In this one, I don't know the odds off my head. I know Sugar Sean is a huge favorite in this one.
-330.
-330. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm telling you right now, take that stimmy and put it on Thomas Almeida. I do not believe in Sugar Show O'Malley at all. I just don't. I don't like his mindset either. And Thomas Almeida is 22-4. Like, this isn't no slouch, which is really interesting to me. And I want to get your opinion on this, because usually Dana likes to build up his fighters, and Sugar Show is going to be like the next McGregor or some shit. He comes off a loss. Dana doesn't give him like a pick-me-up fight.
No, he's hopping right back to, I think, where Dana thought he was going to leave off. Whether Dana might have that same mindset that Sean has, that he didn't lose that fight. Regardless, you don't draw a guy like Thomas Almeida if you don't have Dana's attention. And what he's done has been nothing short of spectacular, even in the Contender Series. What I like about Sean, and he is susceptible to those leg kicks for Almeida, because I know he has great leg kicks. But Sean, we have to understand, he has 4 inches of height on Almeida. He has 2 inches of reach. And he's a guy who he doesn't have an orthodox or southpaw. What's beauty about him, he can throw bombs from switch stances. So that gives him a double, type of advantage. If those leg kicks start to draw, it doesn't completely put him away. He can switch and still throw power off the opposite way, or the opposite hand. And again, I'm going to go back to the numbers. He's averaging almost 6.5 significant strikes landed per minute with almost a 60% accuracy. So he's very precise with the way he throws his strikes. And O'Malley, you can't sleep on his kicks either. He's really good at, all the spinning stuff. He throws the teep kicks, the front kicks, the oblique kicks. And I think if he keeps his distance, he's almost unstoppable at an effective range.
Yeah, and let's just say this too. Thomas Almeida, this will blow your mind. He started off his career 21-0. 21-0. He's 22-4. He hasn't won since 2016. He's lost his last 3 against really solid opponents. A really big question that I want to see answered, if this is part of Thomas Almeida's game plan, is what does Sugar Show look like on the ground?
Yeah, and unfortunately, in his fights, or the ones we've seen, we don't get a lot of that. And what he does, not that his takedown defense is anything spectacular. I think he's very aware, and his octagon IQ is a lot higher than people think. As far as body positioning, because the way you look at him, he's tall, lanky. He doesn't have a lot of muscle build to him. You think a dominant wrestler or grappler would just be able to get their hands on him and throw him around like a rag doll. You haven't seen that in any of his fights, and there's something behind that, the way he trains. And I think if it went to the ground, and the one time it did against his last opponent, based off those leg kicks, his leg was compromised. He didn't get to see, I guess, his full potential. And you look at a guy like Almeida, he likes to stand and bang too. So that draws the question, where does it go if Almeida's leg kicks aren't landing? Does he have to go to the hands and get into that, kind of spray and pray as you would in Call of Duty and just drop the hands and get going? But with a guy like Sugar Sean, I don't see that working out for him very well.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's two on this fight. There are 2 options to bet on. I would say take the dog, because I really believe Thomas Almeida could win this, or take Sean O'Malley by KO. I think this fight could easily end in the distance. Thomas Almeida has been knocked out before. And like you said, Sean O'Malley, if he stays at range, he's probably going to win this fight, and he's probably going to knock him out because he is such like a diverse striker. It's absurd. But I really do want to see if he goes to the ground, what does his ground game look like? Because I know I think he's a brown belt in jiu-jitsu, and I see on his Instagram all the time, he talks about jiu-jitsu a lot, and he likes rolling a lot. But like you said, we've never gotten to see that in the actual octagon.
Well, that's the beauty of it, I guess. You're still seeing on, I guess, social media or whatever. I don't think he'd be posting these achievements that he's accomplished in jujitsu, without putting in the work and actually learning a great deal amount. Because, well, yeah, all we've seen from him is that elite striking. Um, but if you're good at something, why change it? So I think him having that brown belt in his arsenal just makes him a more complete fighter and a more dangerous guy. So long he can stay healthy and be smart about it.
Yeah, so for this one, ladies and gentlemen, I'm putting my money on Thomas Almeida. You got to bet that dog. Always bet the dog. So I think that's a really good underdog play. But also, like I said, I can easily see Sugar Sean knocking him out. Moving on, we have in the co-main Tyron Woodley versus Vicente Luque. Laro?
God damn, dude. This makes me ponder why in the hell is Woodley still in the UFC? I think for those who have watched him, man, when he was in his prime, he was one of the best, arguably, one of the greatest welterweights to ever do it. But since then, it has not been the same guy. And he's fighting a Vicente Luque who's 29, arguably entering his prime. And I'm just basing this off age. Look at Woodley, who is 38. And although he's lost, what was it? Four
Last three.
He's
Usman,
lost his
Burns,
lost three.
Covington.
Yes, Covington, Burns, Usman. Also great fighters, but Woodley was thought to be, one of the greats as well. And those haven't just been losses, they've been bad losses. When you look at Burns and you look at Usman, those were not even wars, the unanimous decisions, 5 rounds. Woodley was just getting battered and beaten. It looked like the fight gods had taken the spirit out of him, and he was just a completely different guy.
Yeah, so this is a really interesting fight. I was listening to Helwani and Tyron Woodley talk today, and Woodley was saying how like he got caught up in the lifestyle. He was in the streets. He wasn't training really hard for the last 3 fights. But here's the thing. Like you said, in the last 3 fights, he's looked beyond terrible. His big thing that got him his claim to fame was his immense counterpunching power. He would sit there, and if you threw, he would throw an overhand right and knock you out immediately. In these last 3 fights, he didn't even throw any punches, basically. He literally stood there across the octagon, and Usman and Burns just put him on his ass. Covington just pieced him up and then put him on his ass. So, and then he's fighting Vicente Luque.
Yeah, a guy in this is interesting because you have Woodley in his last 3 fights, right? And he was facing the top 5, the contender dogs, and it makes me wonder, is Dana trying to turn him now into one of those gatekeeper guys, keeping the top 5 at a standard or where it's at? Because if anyone's knocking on that door, it's Luque right now. Like I said, entering in his prime. He's 11 career knockouts. He's 12-2 in the UFC since 2015, and although he always hasn't been at the highest of the rankings, I'm going to list off some of the names that are very notable that he's beat. Got guys back in the Ultimate Fighter days. Hyder Hassan. This guy was an absolute killer in the Ultimate Fighter series when it was the Black Zillions versus America Top Team, arguably the greatest season regardless. And Hassan was thought to win that. Luque beats him as soon as he gets his contract, so he became the gatekeeper to the Ultimate Fighter. And then after that, he beats Bilal. Remember the name Muhammad. He's got a win over him. Hector Urbina. Nico Price twice. And I don't know if you've seen that guy fight. Nico Price is a dog as well. He had a war with Cerrone not too long ago, I believe, and Mike Perry. And these are all lethal guys. I mean, the welterweight division is quickly becoming what the lightweight division was, I believe, at some point, the toughest division in the UFC.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, Vicente Luque, I just don't know what's going through Tyron Woodley's mind in taking this fight or even fighting, because he just lost 3 fights to the champ and the number 1 and number 2 contender. Now he's fighting probably the next contender, and this dude is the exact opposite to Tyron Woodley once, because clearly in his last 3 fights, he just wants to stand at range and he clearly wants to go the distance. What does Vicente Luque do best? Runs at you and he'll knock you the fuck out.
Yeah, stylistically, Woodley's picking the same guys in repeat, what it looks like. And Luque, although he's just a brown belt, he's one of the guys like O'Malley. We haven't really seen his ground game, but if you have to put on paper, it's got to be lethal because he's getting it from some of the top camps out in Brazil, born and raised in that stuff. But as far as a striker, he's about as lethal as it gets. And his only 2 losses, as far as Luque, are against Leon Edwards by decision and Stephen Thompson by decision, who are arguably top 5 welterweights. So he has been competing with the best for quite some time now. And I think this is his chance to get in that top 5 contention.
Yeah, exactly. Just those names you said. And also not getting knocked out by them. Vicente Luque has one of the strongest chins in all of UFC. You can quote me on this. You will not knock Vicente Luque out. The only way I see Tyron Woodley winning this is wrestling, because Tyron Woodley is a phenomenal wrestler, but he just doesn't use it. And the past 3 fights, we saw him on his ass the whole time. So I'd like to see if he could get a takedown with Vicente Luque. I'd like to get your opinion on that, because I really don't see how Tyron Woodley can stand and bang with him for 3 rounds.
He absolutely can't. And I think when you put in perspective, that's Woodley's only chance to win. And Woodley's last win, which was in 2018, I believe, against Darren Till, where he took him down, beat him up, and got him in a Darce choke. Till might be the best welterweight in regards in the ground game, as far as he can compete with the best. But if it goes there, God forbid, he can't even. He's probably still a white belt in jiu-jitsu is what I'm saying. And you flip the script on that to a guy like Luque. Like we said, we haven't really seen much of him on the ground. I don't have the numbers. I believe he has a good takedown defense rating. And if it goes to that, we've seen he has a gas tank, and as he's a BJJ brown belt. So I think it's a different world, but yeah, I agree. That's Woodley's pretty much only opportunity to get this win.
Yeah. For this one, I think Dana just clearly is making it clear that he thinks Vicente is going to be the next star, and he clearly wants Tyron out of the UFC. So I think he gives him this matchup, hoping that Vicente gives a dominant performance. And then I really think if Tyron loses this, they're going to cut him.
Maybe not even cut him. He might just quit on his own. Because look, Woodley's kind of in a lose-lose position, right? He may be like 4, 5, or 6. I don't know his ranking right now, but if he beats Luque, he's 7. Okay. If he beats Luque, he's going to have to go right back to the guys that just dismantled him physically and mentally. I don't know if he has that dog left in him. I mean, it doesn't look like it in his past fights. And if he does, I don't think there's any resurgence as he gets older to compete against these guys like Usman, Burns, and Covington, who are, again, entering their prime. These are the most dangerous guys in the world, and Woodley's not that guy anymore.
Yeah, so now I'm going to play a little game with you again. These welterweight rankings I have pulled up. We're going to play a little who's next. Now, the big thing I hate about the welterweight division that's made it known is the top guys. Covington's 1, Burns is 2, Edwards is 3, Masvidal's 4. They don't like fighting each other ever. They all want that title shot. So if Vicente Luque, who's at 10, beats Tyron Woodley, who's at 7, he'll take 7. Who would you like to see him next fight? Masvidal is going to fight Usman. Stephen Thompson's up there. And then Michael Chiesa is at 6.
That's tough, because I would be intrigued in that type of grappling match between that would be a great match to, introduce Luque's grappling and see what it's worth against a guy like Chiesa, who also has strengthened his striking in the same regard. But also, I think a little bit more, I would love to see a Luque Thompson rematch, especially since the first fight went to a decision, and that was quite some time ago. I'd be more interested in the Thompson fight.
And then another thing I want to get your take on is Leon Edwards, that terrible eye poke that stopped the Bilal fight. Bilal's 13, Leon's 3. Bilal's calling for an immediate rematch. Leon says no, and I get his point. His point is basically, look, you're below me. Hamzat fell out. You took this on short notice. I gave it to you. Why should I give it to you again if the only benefit, if he beats Bilal, he doesn't go anywhere. He's at 3. Where would you like to see Leon next? Covington sits at 1 and Burns ahead of him at 2.
Well, Leon after, yeah, dude, and that's an eye poke. Bilal's calling for a rematch. He might have to get the surgery that Bisping got, where it's a whole new eye and it's fake. That was the nastiest eye poke I've ever seen in UFC history. So off a fight like that, I don't think he deserves a 1 or 2 spot.
So
After
you'd
that
like to see him go down
I don't necessarily
or
think
rematch?
down. I think either a rematch or Chiesa's schedule looks pretty free right now. I think that could be intriguing.
Yeah, because this is how fucked up the welterweight is. They're giving Masvidal the title shot, and his last fight was a 49-46 across the board to Usman. Now he claims, I didn't have a fight camp, but let me get your take. Do you see any difference in the Usman Masvidal rematch?
Yes. Yes. I think
Ooh, I
I
like it.
think I think Masvidal's the type of guy. I mean, he's another one of those guys. I don't way more than O'Malley, but his fight IQ and the way I think he prepares for these fights is second to none. And it's one thing to come off the couch and earlier in these prelims we were talking with who was it? Give me 1 second. With Menefield and the guy who's facing Menefield, Fabio or whatnot, and that's on short notice. But this is a title fight. This is a completely different animal, and I think as a competitor, even in Usman, you want to face the best, right? And you want to face the best of that person. So I think you give Masvidal a full camp, and it's not like he hasn't seen him before. He's seen what Usman's done, so the pressure then becomes on Usman, and Masvidal has a full camp to know, okay, this is what I did wrong. And then the other stuff like cardio and conditioning comes second to none as far as he has a full camp and he can get ready for it. Not even that he got tired in the first fight. And I think that's what could be a little scary.
Yeah, it'll be because both you and me thought Gilbert Burns was going to beat Usman, and I think the bright lights got to Burns because after the first round, he looked scared. He looked really tired, which is absurd because Burns has an amazing thing. So Masvidal and Usman are going to fight. Really interesting too. It's going to be in Florida. Both of them are Florida boys at a full attendance. Do you think
Do you want to go, first of all?
Yes.
Yeah.
If we can get tickets, because I know they're about to go on sale. I would love to. Do you think with a crowd that there's going to be a big difference, especially because Usman is from Florida, but like Florida loves Masvidal, so I know those fans are going to be on him.
I think secretly, yeah, Usman wants everyone to love him so bad. And that's why he talks the way he does, and he thinks it's confidence. I and a lot of people think it's arrogance. And you look at a guy like Masvidal, and that's, I think, could get to him mentally, because Usman thinks, oh, what better venue could I have than at my home state in Florida? This is my sanctuary. That's like the guys in Brazil having their fights against Americans on Brazilian soil. But that's not what it's going to be. It's probably going to be, I don't know, 80% to 20% Masvidal fans, me included, if I went too. So I think that could get to him mentally.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. We'll be covering that card later. But now, ladies and gentlemen, let's get to it. The main event, the heavyweight champion of the world, Stipe Miocic versus the challenger, Francis the Predator Ngannou.
Boy, where the hell do we start? Oh, man. This is a rematch. Francis is 34. Stipe is 38. And neither guys look that old. First of all, heavyweights age like fine wine, is what I've come to realize. The line somehow is in favor of Ngannou, who had a slight minus 125 even after a rematch, and I think that is because the absolute tear he has been on since losing that fight. That one, and then Derek Lewis, which was the most boring fight on the planet. But after that, he has gone on an absolute tear. Initially, let's get your thoughts.
Yeah, so with Stipe being the dog, I'll point this out. Stipe has been the dog in his last 4 fights. In his last 4 title defenses, he's been the dog. He's won them. The big question is going to be, how does this look different than the rematch? Or the first fight. The first fight was 3 years ago. Francis was really new to it. He had no fight IQ, and the fight basically went. The first round, Francis ran at him, got him with some good shots in the first round, but then he gassed, and Stipe just took him to the ground and won that easily. So a lot of people want to know, does Francis improve his wrestling? I also want to get your thoughts on this. In his last fight since that, Francis combined has not fought a full round in all his fights. Combined, if you add up the time, it's less than 5 minutes.
It's less than 3 minutes.
Less than 3 minutes.
It's less
Even
than 3 minutes.
Crazier.
his last 4 opponents, right? And they've gotten better and better. First one being Junior Dos Santos, 1 minute 11 seconds. Curtis Blades, 45 seconds. On a rematch, Cain Velasquez, 20 seconds, and Jair Rosenstruck, 20 seconds, all by brutal fucking knockouts. It's clear he has been on a tear, and he has stepped his damn game up. But like you said, how in the mind of both of these guys, switch up their camps to, adjust their game. I guess more importantly for Francis, but for Stipe, I mean, mentally you have to switch something up, seeing what Ngannou has done since that last fight.
Yeah, and the big question is, what does Francis's wrestling look like? What does his cardio look like? Because his last fights have been less than 3 minutes. We haven't gotten to see anything. Like, all we've seen is this man, they start the fight, he taps gloves, he knocks you out, he leaves. Now, the big question is, Stipe has been in some wars. Stipe is known to get hit. I don't know how this fight really plays out, because we haven't gotten enough tape on Francis besides the Derek Lewis and the Stipe Miocic fight. Besides that, they end in less than like 30 seconds every time by brutal knockout, like you say.
Yeah, and that's tough. And here's an aspect that we haven't even brought up since the 3 years ago that fight. Dana White has changed the relative octagon size. It shrank by a certain circumference, or what have you. So the train of thought is here: who does that benefit more? Does that benefit Stipe, whether he can engage in his takedowns and put pressure on the fence if he needs to, or does it benefit Ngannou, and meaning he can get to Stipe a lot quicker? And Stipe, he's been known, if he gets hit, like he can scramble around and do this or that, but a little less room with two of the biggest guys on the planet. That's a tough question to crack, I believe.
And they're fighting in the Apex, which has an even smaller octagon size than the smaller octagon size that Dana has said. So like you said, I think that benefits Francis, because Stipe's not going to have room to run away. The real question is going to be, can Francis either A, stuff the takedown, or B, be able to get off his back without taking enough shots to where Stipe can win a round?
Yeah, there was some interesting tape that I saw, some training footage with Ngannou, or some fight footage in that last one, what have you, with Stipe, that I just noticed from a stand-up standpoint. When Ngannou would enter in with either a jab or a left overhand, or just a lead jab, and give all that space up, 90% of the time, that's if you go like that and you go in haywire crazy, that's when Stipe changes levels and does what he does best and wrestle. If I'm I'm no stand-up guy by any means, but if Ngannou's coaches realize this, I hope he's been training, more or less a jab and then uppercut, so to speak. Because there's two trains of thought to that. It's all the overhands and everything. He ducks and changes levels. But if you throw an uppercut behind a jab, one, it could land. Two, even if you miss it, you already have an underhook on one side, and that makes it a lot easier to defend a takedown. And this is the type of fight, where it was very close to call, and it's tough to tell which guy in their camp, how much can they change up their game, respectively.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought up that jab too, because Francis is not a technical striker by any means. If his coaches can teach him how to throw a proper jab, he would be so much better, because he is so wild with his strikes. But then again, he can be, just because of the sheer power he has. But by no means does he know how to utilize a proper jab. He kind of just throws it out there, like you said, but not in the way that like good fighters throw it out, where they're trying to range find. He's throwing the jab to knock you out, which is absurd.
And he's moving in with those quote unquote jabs. They're more like lead hooks from the hip and have bad intention. There's no range finding. There's none of that. And with that, when he's leading with it, his legs are moving underneath him. He's not a pocket striker. He's a bum rush guy towards you. And like you said, he can afford to do that based off his sheer power. And the last 4 fights, I think, dictate that statistic.
Yeah, and Stipe had an interview that came out yesterday where they discussed this. He said that this will be another easy win. He said Francis is no problem to him at all. He thinks he's going to implement the same game plan. It is going to, and I know Francis, because he was on the Joe Rogan podcast like a month ago, has said that he has taken a huge liking to jujitsu and wrestling, and he's trying to immerse himself. The question is how good, what people have he surrounded himself with that can teach him the proper thing, because Stipe is a hell of a wrestler. Um, he's taken down Daniel Cormier, who arguably is one of the greatest wrestlers in all of MMA, easily put Daniel on his ass. And Francis by no means is anywhere in leagues with DC. So I guess final thoughts, Laro. We got to give him something. Who are you liking in this fight?
Got to give the people what they want, right? Shoot. If I'm going with rematches, I like the guy who lost the first one. With the knowledge that they've gained in the time off, it's been 3 years, but he can always go back and look at tape and see what he's done wrong. His coach, he's got a great team with him. And if he has been working on his wrestling and jiu-jitsu, I hope it's the type of wrestling where it's not to engage, and even the jiu-jitsu, it's to get back to your feet and keep it standing. And I think if Ngannou does that, all in all, Stipe, if he can't implement his wrestling, he does not stand a chance. I am taking the minus 125 Ngannou. Hit it.
All right, yeah, I think one big key for Francis is that when he gets taken down, I think he needs to be near the fence. I think that's gonna be his best asset, is to use that fence. Because I honestly think if Stipe takes him down in the middle of the ring, I honestly don't see how Francis is gonna get up from that. I'm taking Stipe. I'm gonna take the champ. I just don't have enough information on Francis's game plan or any tape to watch to see if he's figured it out. I think Stipe is going to do the same thing he did. Now, an interesting thing that I found that we can discuss is it's over under 1.5. 1.5.
Pounds?
Yeah, that's the over under
Ugh.
in a 5-round fight. I like the over in that only because if Francis does not knock him out in that first minute, I see this fight going a long while.
I would take the over as well. Yeah, and like you said, 1 minute. We haven't seen Francis even go to the second, let alone the fifth. So if that were the big question, yeah, if that power translates to the second round. But also Stipe's not getting any younger. We've seen he has a granite solid chin, but one day that's going to crack. And what I've seen from Ngannou, he hasn't lost an ounce of power. So, and if his striking's improved and whatnot, I'll take the over 1.5. But if it's under, I would not be surprised.
Yeah, and now we're going to play this game, and this is going to be really interesting. So the winner of this is already going to get John Jones. That's been decided. Dana White's already come out. That's going to be later.
Really?
In the fall. Yeah, the winner of this fight gets John Jones in the fall. John Jones has been bulking up to heavyweight. I sent you that pic. Holy shit, he looks big. My question to you is, and whoever wins this, they fight John Jones. If John Jones wins that fight, becomes a heavyweight champ, do you see him trying to go back down to light heavyweight to get 2 belts at once?
No, I don't think he would have taken all his time off and clearly put on all this weight. The guy walked around at 230 naturally and cut to 205. His recent pictures, when's he going to stop growing? What's that perfect weight for the heavyweights to be elite and successful at? For Stipe, it's found to be around 235 to 245. He's ranged in between that 10-pound range since he got the belt. Jones, shit, he might be pushing 250 now. And it's like, how big is too big? How much is that going to dictate what his skill set still is to the range? I'm sure the range of motion and all that stuff is there, but comes into play his speed, his quickness, his cardio, his endurance. His endurance is going to take a hit. I'll tell you this right now, putting on that much fucking muscle and then fighting guys, who are as big as you, where you're going to have to exert that muscle. Yeah, those are my thoughts on Jones at heavyweight.
Yeah, and it's clear Dana does want Francis to win this, just because the Francis John Jones fight would be absurd compared to this, because Stipe is just the blue collar UFC worker. He's going to go in there. He's going to get the win, but he's not going to get the fans on his side if you're just a casual. Francis brings that knockout power, and especially against a John Jones, which will be really interesting to see. I'm really excited to see what John Jones looks at heavyweight because, like you said, the big question is going to be, because he was such a dynamic striker to begin with, how does this affect his speed? How does this affect his cardio? And he was such a great wrestler, and I know his brothers are like defensive tackles in the league, so he's wrestled big ass
Chandler
dudes.
Jones,
Yeah,
argue one of the best defensive ends in the league.
huge too, massive ass dude.
Yeah,
He's like
big guy.
270. But like, how does John Jones fare in the wrestling department when he goes against these heavyweights? Well, I guess not Francis since it's wrestling, but like Stipe, Derek Lewis, Curtis Blades.
See, yeah, that's where I was flabbergasted when you said Dana's already given Jones the winner of that. I thought for sure Derek Lewis was the next guy in line for the belt. And after Jones gets his crack at whether it be Stipe or Ngannou, it better fucking be Derek Lewis because he deserves it more than anyone else. My H-Town boy. Love him to death. But yeah, you take a guy like Jones, how his wrestling is going to translate, it's not going to translate as well. And this is why. You're not the big dog anymore. There are guys that are bigger and stronger than you, no matter how much weight you've put on. So he's not just going to be able to dominate guys, especially who are way shorter than him. His reach isn't going to be as big of an aspect. And I think that's huge, especially for a guy like Jones who fights at a distance like that. These guys are going to be his size. And but I think this is where he's belonged all along, since I feel like he's cleared out the light heavyweight division maybe 2 years ago. Like it hasn't been as fun to watch, relatively.
Yeah, the light heavyweight and the heavyweight division in the UFC are definitely some of the weakest divisions that they have. I mean, outside the top 3, maybe you could push it to the top 5. It's not that good. Like a big thought of mine that I've said that some people might not agree with is, if you were a heavyweight weight right now, like you, Laro, even with your skill set, if you were a heavyweight, I truly believe if you gave yourself 18 months, 24 months to train really hard, you would be able to be a UFC caliber heavyweight. Maybe not the top 5, but outside the top 5, it's a pretty weak ass division. Like, it's just not like, and the Tai Tuivasa fight, the guy that fought him looked like he had no idea what he got leg kicked and then he got an overhand right and got knocked out. Like, that's not UFC caliber at all.
Yeah, we'll take a look at outside the UFC, even the national average on adult men. It's typically around 5'7" to 5'9", 130 to 160 pounds or what have you. That it's just the amount of there aren't that many heavyweights in general, let alone enough to stockpile in a UFC who are all training daily. Heavyweights, if you're that big, most people just like to sit on the couch, whether they're athletes or they can be like an offensive lineman if they're athletic whatsoever. It's just way harder to find guys like that in general, and let alone training partners. Like who in the hell is going to want to step in and train with Francis Ngannou, and box with him, or Derek Lewis? There's levels to the shit, and the guys who are in lighter weight class have such a stiffer competition because there's so many more training partners and so many more up and comers who are competing at these weight classes. Heavyweight is it's like Pluto. It's not even a planet compared to these other weight classes. So the level of competition, it's just not there.
Yeah. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to end this podcast. UFC 260 this Saturday, headlined by Stipe Miocic versus Francis Ngannou for the heavyweight title, baddest man on the planet. Laro, any last thoughts for the audience?
No, tune on in, everybody. Hopefully in the next few pay-per-views, Evan and I will be able to do a live stream, a live event commentary type deal. And I think that could be a lot of fun. But there's a lot of good cards lined up here in the summer and the upcoming fall. So definitely stay tuned. Appreciate y'all for watching.
Yeah, we're working on some cool things for y'all. Thank you.